Hello, hello, everyone. We are going to get started in a few minutes. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today for today's Nonprofit Live. Today's topic is tips for launching your volunteer program. So let's take a moment while we wait for others to join. Invite friends to our Facebook group. So we are almost at 400 in the group, y'all. I think the last time I checked, we only needed like 15 more people. So if you want to take a moment and just click on the invite button in the corner of the group, just invite some others into this group so that they can hear what we're talking about today. And then go ahead and tag people into this live, because we're going to be talking about tips for launching your volunteer program today. Good morning, Charlene. How are you? Good morning, Danita. Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started shortly. I just want to allow some time for others to hop into this live. If you're catching us on replay, enter a hashtag replay once you catch up in the chat box. And while we wait, in the chat box, drop any tips that you might have for launching a volunteer program. So that's going to be our conversation today, is talking about launching a volunteer program for your organization. If you have any tips that you found successful within your organization, please share that in the chat box, and then we'll go over some of those tips, and I'll share some additional ones throughout this conversation. All right, let's jump right in. So today's topic, again, is tips for launching your volunteer program. So let's kick off this conversation by discussing why nonprofits invest in volunteers. That's very important to know, because otherwise, you may not see the value of having a volunteer program. So some reasons that nonprofits have volunteers in place is because volunteers, they become members of your organization, of your team, and they bring a very unique skill to helping your organization. An example I have of that is when we were preparing to begin the hiring process of employees for our nonprofit organization. I had no idea. HR is not my area, meaning I know from more of a management side, but not, from an actual human resource side. So with that, interestingly enough, the timing was perfect, and we had a volunteer come in who that's what she does. That her day job is working HR for a large nonprofit organization, and she just wanted to be able to give back of her time. So she came in, and then interestingly, we had another volunteer who her main job is serving as a volunteer manager, and she also wanted to give of her time to an organization. So we were able to put them together, and they just developed our HR handbook for us. And that's just an example of how they brought their unique skills together to help our organization build capacity. They built an amazing handbook, over 60 pages for employees. Of course, we had to involve staff into the conversation as to when it came to designing some of the policies and procedures, and involve, board members and so forth into the conversation. But that process, just having their expertise in there was absolutely amazing. So volunteers bring value to organizations. Another reason is volunteers are committed and can become your donors. Oftentimes, volunteers are more willing to give to an organization that they have a relationship and feel connected to. So you might have individuals that walk in as volunteers that eventually becomes donors for your organization. I have an example of that with our organization. We have our toy drive every year, and we have a volunteer who makes a great contribution to this toy drive and adopt a few families. And each year it just continues to grow, because it started out with, you know, her family, immediate family, adopting some families, and then she was able to get some friends and families that came, that visit over the holidays to adopt some families. So we were able to get a lot of more families adopted over the years. So volunteers are committed and can become your donors. And what better advocate than having a volunteer that has worked your organization, going out and spreading the word about what you're doing. Let me do a check-in before I continue to go. Let's see who we have here. Hi, IEZ. Thank you. So you said the best advice is to stick to your own path. That's right, because what works for some organizations may not always work for your organization. That is absolutely right. Good morning, Vic. Thank you for joining us. All right, thank you all, and continue to tag others and invite others into this conversation. I'm going to keep on going. So right now we're just talking about why nonprofits should invest in volunteers. So we've already talked about volunteers are members of the organization's team. Volunteers are committed and can become donors. And feel free to share any other important reasons that you feel that organizations should invest in volunteers. So another reason is volunteers give of their time. According to the independent volunteer sector, the current estimated national value of each volunteer hour is $28.54. Just think about that. That's almost $30 an hour is what they're valuing a volunteer hour at. But we know, of course, the value of volunteer time is much more than that. For example, that HR example that I gave, we know that it's much more, but this is just a value that they kind of add on a nationwide aspect. And there's a whole nother, and we'll talk about that throughout the months, being able to quantify your volunteer time. So that's, and then volunteers can become your ambassadors. So that's another really good reason. We know that one of the most successful marketing tools is word of mouth. So the more volunteers you have, the more involved they are, the more they're out there talking about the organization. There has been so many resources that has came into our organizations, and it's not because no one person or a couple people on a team, it's because our volunteers going out there spreading the word. And then now it's to the point where if we have a need, we put it out there, and normally within someone's network, whether it's our volunteers, our board member, we're able to find those resources. So volunteers can become ambassadors for your organization, and they will have that firsthand experience. So you definitely want to involve volunteers. So that's some of the reason that you want to include volunteers. Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for tuning in. All right, let's keep going. So the other part that you want to know when developing, because these are the things that you want to keep in mind when launching your volunteer program, is what benefits does it bring to the organization? But on the flip side, you also want to know what benefits do you bring to your volunteers? So the benefits to volunteer through volunteering with your organization may be, these are just some ideas. Networking opportunities, because they get to network with other volunteers in the area. I gave that example earlier of bringing the HR expert in with our volunteer manager expert together, and they were able to do amazing things on both sides of our organization, on our volunteer management side, along with our human resource side of the organization. So networking opportunities, they're able to build relationships that I'm sure will last a lifetime. Mental health support. Sometimes, volunteers just want to get involved and even just think about yourself, just to be able to just, after a busy day, just to be able to really just give back, and it's a great feeling. And we know that, through volunteering and serving your community, that in itself can help with your mental health, just that feeling of giving back and helping others. So that's one of the areas there. Professional development. It allows them an opportunity to develop professionally. So within our organization, we have volunteers from different levels, some on the expert and some on they're just entering the field. An example of that is like on our resource development side, we have that same spectrum The good thing that happens within that is our expert is matched with, let's say, a new person meeting and entering, let's say, the field of, I'm just gonna throw an example of grant writing. And we're able to put them together, and that provides a professional development and a mentorship relationship as well. And while still benefiting the organization and being able to bring more resources into the organization. So that it's just a wonderful thing. Reputation and personal branding for them. Some volunteers, it helps build, like this is what if it's a homeless, let's say homeless focused organization on homelessness, and that's what they really truly are passionate about. It can help with building their reputation around that area. A sense of purpose. I talked about that mentorship opportunities already that can be provided, along with for some volunteers, it's to meet a requirement. There are sometimes, let's say, high school students that need to get a certain number of hours in order to get a scholarship or in order to graduate. And they're coming in for that. Or it might be a college student who's looking for internship hours in order to graduate as well. So it may be for those reasons. So some come in, with because it's helping them meet their requirement that they need. And for some, it's a faith-based reinforcement for them. So that's just some of the benefits. So we talked about what benefits, what's the benefit of volunteering. And then we also talked about what's the benefit of having volunteers within your organization. So let me just check the chat box. All right, so I'm going to keep going. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. If you have any tips for volunteering that you've learned from your own volunteer program, drop that in the chat as well. I just want to start this conversation so that if you don't have a volunteer program, and yes, it's called a program because you should be treating it as one of your programs where you're going through a planning process, you're recruiting volunteers, you're training them, and you managing and evaluating as if you would do one of your other programs within your organization. So if you don't have a volunteer program, consider building one. And I will say, remember that the planning process and developing processes as a part of that program is going to be very important. Of course, it's easy to just say, hey, fill out an application, now you're a volunteer, but you want to build out a whole, a process. So I'm going to take a moment and talk about some tips for developing your program, your volunteer program. All right, so one tip is do not skip the planning process when implementing your volunteer program. And I talked about that just now. Do not skip that planning process. It's very important. That may be, you want to make sure that you have clear job descriptions so the volunteers know what their responsibilities are, what are they coming in to do. Because think about it, if you went into a job and you just don't know, even though I know this does happen, and you just don't know what exactly the expectations are or what are you coming in to do, more than likely you might not be there long. And then think about it, a volunteer who's unpaid, this is an unpaid role, you probably won't be there that long if you don't feel a sense of connection to what you're doing. You want to develop a volunteer manual, aka some call it a volunteer handbook, and that's a handy guide similar to how you have a board manual that kind of goes over the expectations, roles, policies, and procedures related to your volunteer program. That way you set that foundation for the volunteers so that you got the job description in place. You have a handbook that also can serve starting out. It can help you with building your orientation because you want them to mirror each other. And then you also want to, have a plan for how are you going to recruit volunteers? How are you going to train them? How are you going to manage the volunteers? Are you going to have are you as executive director? Are you the one overseeing the volunteers? Do you have another team member that's overseeing? You want to think about what that structure looks like so that there's no gap in communication. And I guess this is my perfect time to make a plug. If you have not signed up for our People, Process, Technology, Growing Your Nonprofit to the Next Level training coming up this month webinar, please sign up, check that out, because we'll talk a little bit more about how you can develop put the people, processes, and systems in place to be able to help build well, any program, but also your volunteer program and your organization as a whole. Let me take a moment and check the chat box. And you'll see the link for signing up for that webinar there. It's a free webinar, March 22nd at 7 o'clock. Definitely check that out because we're going to talk some more about building people, processes, and systems for your nonprofit. You also want to have a process for evaluating your volunteer program. So that also is important, another tip there. And then another tip that I want to share, similar to your other programs, you want to have a budget for your volunteer program. And that, because that budget is going to include how much are you spending on the recruitment process? How much are you spending on the recognition process? Because you want to recognize your volunteers, the systems that you need to keep up with your volunteers. So you want to develop a budget, even if it's something small starting out and you continue to build on it, that's fine, but you want to have something designated for your volunteer program. And sometimes you need to start with the basic program and then build over time. And that goes back to that people, processes, technology. And I'll talk some more about that in the webinar when you join us, but it's pretty much, it's a cycle. So as soon as you put the people, processes, and technology in place and you're able to grow your nonprofit to the next level, then you have to do it all over again. But now you're going, to the next level and just keeps growing like that. So sometimes you got to start with the basic program. And then just once you have that in place, then you'll move to the next level and keep going and continue to expand your volunteer program. Because I can tell you, our volunteer program today is not the same volunteer program when we started back in 2012. So it will look different for everyone depending on where you are in that process of building your program. All right, let me check the chat box. If you have any questions, feel free to share. I hope this information is handy as you think about launching your volunteer program. If you do not have one, feel free to share anything related to how your current volunteer program is going. Thank you, Vanessa. All right. So last but not least, we like to close these out with homework. So your homework is to register for the webinar for next month's webinar on March 22nd at 7 p.m. and where we're going to talk about people, processes, and technology. And like I said, what we're going to talk about can be used for your volunteer program. It can be used for your organization as a whole, but we're going to talk about how you can get the people in place on no matter where your budget is as a nonprofit, get the processes in place and get the systems in place to grow your nonprofit to the next level. So that's number one, register for that free webinar, share that webinar so that others that you think should be there is there. And that is going to be through Zoom. I just want to let you all know that will not be through a live. So you just got to register to get those links. And once again, don't do it alone. So you'll hear that common theme that I talked about, don't do it alone. I talked about it last week regarding partnerships within your organization, not doing it alone, getting partners involved. Now I'm saying it again, don't do it alone, get volunteers involved. It always, whenever I speak to organizations, they're like, or executive director says, I'm the one doing everything. My board, helps, occasionally or at how they can. Because of course, they have full-time jobs as well. I have to set that reminder, don't do it alone. There are ways to get help and there's people waiting to help. It's just a matter of you setting up those processes, those systems to be able to bring people in and keep them in, because not only just recruiting them, but also retaining them as well. All right. All right. I see, Charlene, you said, how do we register? So the link is above and we will we'll repost it in the chat box for the webinar. Actually, I can post that right now. Hopefully I did that right. Okay, there we go. All right, you should see the registration link where you can register right there. All right, and so group updates. Don't forget, this month's theme is volunteer management. And on each segment, I like to kind of remind you all, if you're a newer organization, or even if you're an organization that's mid-sized, you're kind of like, it's so much, I just don't know where to do and where to focus on, follow our theme. This month, just focus on volunteer management. How are you going to build your volunteer team? Do you need to go back and kind of revamp your volunteer management team? Because we're going to be pouring resources related to volunteer management here. Don't forget, in the group, if you click at the top area, there's the guide section where you can go back and look at other topics that we talked about over the last few months there as well. And don't forget to invite friends to the group. So we like to set our goals. So last I checked, which I don't see it now, I know last I checked, we're just 15 away from 400. So let's set a goal that by next week, this time, well, not this time, because our Nonprofit Live next week is going to be at 7 p.m. and we're going to have Mr. Joe Tolliver join us next week. So by next week's NPE Live, we will be at 400. So take a moment, invite others to the group. You can just go up there right now. If you like me, if it don't happen now, it might not happen. Go up there, click on the invite button, invite others to the group so that they can join in on the fun that we have. We have some exciting things coming up for you all in the next few months. So we definitely want to make sure that we get everyone involved. So other than that, that is all I have today. So thank you all so much for joining us. Charlene, I see that you registered. Awesome. Can't wait to see you there. So if you have any questions, you know how to find us. And thank you all for joining us for this week's Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. All right. See you all later.